Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa McKay. I'm a developer advocate with JFrog, and I'm here today with Robert Reeves, the CTO of Liquibase. Today, we're going to talk about the challenges of taking an existing application that is using a database as its data source, and all of those complications involved when you want to take an application like this and update it. Get it updated and running in production after it's already been out there a while. I'm talking about day 2 of development and deployment with a database. JFrog is a DevOps company, and we pride ourselves in providing tools that developers need to use in your day-to-day development and bug fixing. But long before I joined the JFrog developer relations team, I was a developer myself. 20 plus years. I've got lots of experience using JFrog products, even like JFrog Artifactory during that period of time. And now with the JFrog platform, there are other capabilities available that include simplifying the setup of your continuous integration, performing binary scans of your artifacts with JFrog X-Ray that would detect vulnerabilities in all of the artifacts that you're using in your application, and making sure that your updates are promoted appropriately across all of your steps in your pipeline, that you have the appropriate quality checks in place to make sure that you can confidently deploy to production without falling into any pitfalls. So that will be my side of the conversation, the JFrog side in easing development woes. But Robert, tell us a little bit more about Liquibase and where that fits into this entire process.
Well, sure. Well, look, it takes a village to release software. All right. So we can't just rely on our dev team, our DevOps team. We need to bring in the database as well. These applications require a database. And so if we're going to make updates to the database schema, we need to do it in a way that aligns with our application release so that we don't have one side, the application side is automated where we're using, and on the database side, it's manual. We can automate them both. So my hope, and Melissa and I's hope is that today, when we take you through this, it's going to be an existing application where Melissa's going to make a really cool change to it. And we're not only going to update the application, but also the database and do it in a seamless way that's automated. And then later makes it even easier to do follow-on updates. Wow.
This is going to be fun. So today we're going to do some role playing. I'm going to be the developer, and Robert is going to be our DBA for this particular project. For you guys and for everyone out there, we want to show you how this would look in real life. So we're taking an actual application that's very popular out there called Spring Pet Clinic. And we're going to use that for our needs today in order to demonstrate how to update an application that is already out there in the wild. All right. Let's get started.
Do we do a star wipe now? Move into role playing?
Move into role playing.
Imagine a star wipe. Imagine a star wipe.
Hey, Robert, how's it going?
It's going great, Melissa.
This is good. We have a new project that has come onto our to-do list. We have a local veterinarian that uses this project called Pet Clinic, and they use this to register their animal patients and also to track their owners and whatnot. And I'd love to show you what it looks like. It's actually already out there running in the cloud. They use this application daily. So we need to be careful not to interrupt what they need it for on a daily basis. So we need to make sure that we do any changes in the background, test them really well before we release to them.
That sounds like a good thing.
Yes. Let me show you what it looks like, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about where the resources are. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, this is the project. You should be able to see Pet Clinic. All right, cool. If we go to the home screen, it's just a normal introduction. This is where they register all of their owners and new visits and new pets. And the problem that this clinic has right now is that when you look at an owner, let's say George walks in, and then you want to add a pet information in order to, record this visit to the vet. There's no way to put in a chip ID. You know those chips that you put in your pets if they get lost, they
Absolutely.
can be fed. And yeah, I actually just put those in my pets recently, and they're pretty awesome.
I think my family wants to put one in me to find me when I wander.
Yes. That makes sense. Anyway, so they need an extra field here. This means that I need to do, some changes. This is a Spring application, so there's Java in the background here. I can make some changes to add this field, and then we can help this client get along with their day and be able to track these chips.
Sure. I can imagine this would be useful for if the pet is missing, the owner can contact the vet and find out what that chip ID is.
Exactly.
Or if for some reason the vet catches wind that a pet is missing and finds a chip ID, they can look it up. This is a good feature. Reuniting pets and owners. We're saving the world. I love it.
This is real life here, folks.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, let's get started then. We need to do a little planning exercise and talk about the things that actually need to happen here. So like I said, this project is running in the wild. It's in the cloud right now. They have a GitHub repository that has all of the code in it. So we have that. And it is containerized. This is another complication. We need to make sure that
That's
container
a good complication.
Yes. I want to take a look at it because I haven't looked at this code before. I want to make sure that the container is being built appropriately and that all of the dependencies and everything that are coming into this project, that they're pulling them from an appropriate place. And if they aren't, we're going to help them set it up so that we make our lives easier and we make this project better when we're done with it.
Well, this is what I learned in scouting. Leave it better than you found it. I like this.
Exactly. All right, cool. So first things first, we need to make sure that we have a local dev environment. So I'll work on getting that set up. And then we need to make sure we have a test environment that has a database out there that is as close to production as possible. So it's a database that we want to have, running out there in the cloud that we can just update the application and make sure that everything still works.
Well, and that's a really important thing, because when you have your test environment as close to your production environment, that when you roll out a change to it, you're going to catch that issue before it hits production. This is a very good thing.
Exactly. I've been on teams in the past where I don't know if it's just a resource shortage where there was no test environment and things just went directly to production. That's not a good idea. And the other side of it is having an environment that doesn't resemble production. You run into all kinds of issues there, things that you don't expect, things that you don't see until you've already deployed and your customers see it before you do. That's never a good place to be.
Absolutely.
Okay, well then, Robert, I will go ahead and get this part set up. I'll show how, let's get on the line a little bit later and I'll show you everything that I have set up for this project and what I've done so far. And if I run into any issues too, I'll make sure to bring those to you right away.
All right, wonderful. Happy to help. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So I have been left alone with this project to get started on adding this new feature. And what I've learned so far is that there is no artifact management going on here. So this project is out there in production. Someone has a container image somewhere describing this project, but we're not sure where it's at. So we're going to fix that. And right away, I'm going to set up some repositories using the JFrog platform. These are going to be for Docker images specifically, because I know this application is containerized. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to go ahead and log into my instance of the platform here. All right, and I'm presented with the first screen, which is really intuitive, easy to set up. Right away, I know I want to set up a Docker registry. So if I go ahead and click on this, I have some choices here. I can set up some new ones, or I can look at the default ones that are already set up and learn how to interact with those repositories. Today, I'm going to click on a new one, and I'm going to go ahead and choose a name for it. And as you can see, I get several different types of repositories that will be created for me. For Docker, there's going to be 3, a local, a remote, and a virtual. And just to explain, a local repository that is meant for packages or artifacts that you have created yourself internally. A remote repository is one where if you need third-party images or artifacts or open source artifacts, any dependencies that you need to pull from a central repository or a central registry like Docker Hub, that's what the remote repository is for. It behaves as a proxy and cache level so that subsequent requests will pull it from the JFrog platform once it has been pulled in from that remote repository or registry. And then finally, we have the virtual repository. This one is basically just a grouping. You can choose the repositories that you want to include into this group, and it provides you with basically single access for both local and remote repositories. Using this quick setup, I'm going to get 3. They're automatically going to be set up behind the scenes for me, so there's no complication here. If I go ahead and click create, in this case, I have actually already created a pet clinic repository, so it's going to give me a warning that it already exists and please choose a different name. I'm going to add a 2 here just to show you what it looks like. And then once you've added your repository and chosen the name, you're going to get some information on how to interact with it. First, you're going to need to log in. Then to deploy, it gives you, your tag and your push commands. These are, your typical Docker commands that you're going to be using. And then to resolve, how to pull from your repository. So these are things that I will be using in my project, especially as I'm, going to build my image. That's actually the next step I'm going to go ahead and do. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this screen for now and head over to my IDE. And I want to take a look at all of the files that I've needed to change here for this project in order to make this feature possible. The first thing I want to do is just take a look at the Docker file and see what already exists here. And I left these lines commented. These are the original lines that were in here. By default, Docker, when you're building a Docker image, if you don't specify a registry, then it's going to pull from Docker Hub. You might not necessarily always want to do that, especially on your build server. You're going to want to point to a cache like JFrog platform provides you. And so this is an example of what that might look like. With the registries that we just created, I have my registry here listed here, and then the name of the image. And this is going to go ahead and pull this image initially from Docker Hub, but then subsequent requests for this image will pull from the platform. This is a multi-stage build Docker file, it looks like. The first image that is used includes Maven and everything needed in order to build this Spring project. And then the next line here on line 13, it looks like we're getting a smaller image of OpenJDK 8, Java 8. And again, I went ahead and added the registry that I just created here so that we're not pulling from Docker Hub. All right, so after making sure that I can build this image successfully, I did want to go ahead and make some code changes. We know that we need to fix up some of these files so that we can include this new field. This is the pet file. We just added a chip ID, some getters and a setter here. And then there were a few fragments that we needed to update in order, and this is for the front end in order to be able to see the change. And when we edit a pet, we want to be able to enter that value in here. So all of these files were necessary, but there really wasn't a whole lot of changes. Now, the key here, though, is the unit tests for this project actually use an internal memory or an internal database. So an H2 database. And when you build the project, there's actually a Docker Compose file that includes a MySQL database. So the complication here is that when running unit tests, we're using this H2 database, which is provided with some initial data and a schema. And since we added a field, we needed to go ahead and change these two files to make sure that we have a new schema. As you can see here, we have the pets table. We've added a chip ID here. And then in the data, we've added some test data to initialize this. And then same for MySQL. There's also a data file here and a schema file here. And those also need to include this new field, the definition of the new field, and the data that goes with it. The reason for this is because as a developer, I'm going to be constantly launching this on my local development environment. So I want a fresh database. I don't necessarily want to keep an old database around, especially when I'm making changes like this. So I went ahead and made all of these changes. I've rebuilt the image. I've added the data that I needed. I've added the schema that I needed and everything else. And everything's great. Everything is running great. I'm able to add this chip ID as I imagined. However, now it's time to put this actually in a testing environment so that we can have some folks hammer on it and make sure that it works okay, that all of the acceptance criteria has been met. Even though it's passing unit tests, I need to make sure, that it's gone through some additional integration tests. Now, I've learned there is a testing database and there's a production database. And I'm running into trouble getting this launched and running using the test database. And it's obvious why. It's because we're missing this column in that database. When I deploy this application, I'm not deploying a fresh database. I'm using the one that exists. So this is a problem because now I have this application looking for this field that isn't there. I think it's time to call our DBA and see if there is something that we can do about this. At the very least, maybe he can add this column for me, or maybe he can tell me a better way to do this. Hi again, Robert. I have great news on our pet clinic status. I was able to get the application all set up. I have our CI set up in our pipeline and everything. I was able to get a little test infrastructure going. The problem is, even though I can run this locally and everything works great, when I try to update the pet clinic application in our test environment, it fails because it's looking for that new column that we added for the chip ID for the pet. So I need your help with this. I need to be able to add a column to that database.
Well, look, this happens, right? We need to keep our database schema changes and our application code changes in sync. And so we could take two paths here. One is I would gladly add that, no problem. But you know, what you're also trying to do here is you're not just trying to update the application, you're trying to inject some DevOps goodness here. And so why don't we automate this with Liquibase? Why don't we start using Liquibase so that we can empower the development team, empower you to be able to make these changes and not have to reach out to myself and the rest of the DBA team. And we could just make things a lot smoother, shorten that feedback loop.
So this means
do the DevOps thing.
I can make these changes. I don't have to call you every time I need to add a column or anything like that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we don't call system administrators anymore when we need cloud instances. We don't, we use infrastructure as code. We certainly have code automation to push out our application. Let's do the same thing with our database. It works over there. Might as well work on the database too. Let's see what happens.
Awesome. Okay. Walk me through how to do this, because this sounds like an awesome plan.
Well, sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I'll set this up. Here we go. Sharing screen. And so, me being a DBA, I have my, favorite DBA tools. All right. In this case, I'm using dbeaver. And you can see that I'm connected to these two databases. We have two that are running in ECS, MySQL running in ECS. We have our test environment and we have our production environment. Now, we have tables here. We have indexes. We have data. Okay. So what we need to do is I need to provide you an artifact that you can update later. And for Liquibase, that's called a changelog. All right, great. So what I'm going to do is first create the changelog. Now, Liquibase is pretty handy about being able to do reverse engineering of a database schema. So you don't have to write all this stuff. And so what I need to do is create a liquibase.properties file. And it has, driver URL, username and password, changelog. Now, cool thing about Liquibase, I could do XML, I could do YAML, I could do JSON, but I'm an old crusty DBA. So we're going to use XML. All right. Because that's what I'm happy with. And so we're going to make sure that we're looking at the production instance. That's .198. And here we go. All right. So this looks good. And I'll go to my command line here and I'll run Liquibase generate changelog. Cool. This is going to play Go Fish with the database. Do you have any tables? Yes, I do. Give them to me. And then it writes it to the file. It will get indexes, all that good stuff. And it looks like changelog was created. Now, just like the command line tells me, hey, best practice, let's go look at this thing. Okay, we should probably do that. So it looks like I put it in right there. And so here we go. So we'll see that we're creating a table called owners, pets. Oh, that's neat. Specialties, types. Well, that corresponds with a lot of this stuff here. Here are all the tables. If we scroll down a little bit more, we'll see that once we get past tables, we start getting into indexes. Ooh, that's neat. And then also foreign key constraints. Wow. Okay. So now that I have this changelog that represents my database schema, I could point this at any database schema with Liquibase update and we'll create that stuff. But in production, this stuff is already created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Liquibase changelog sync. And so if we go here and do Liquibase help, we'll see all the neat stuff that Liquibase can do. as long as I preface it with dash dash. And so we'll get a listing of all the functionality that we have here. And if we scroll up, we'll see that we have generate changelog. All right, cool. Oh, I'm sorry. We were doing changelog sync. My apologies. We've already did generate changelog. So we'll do changelog sync. There's a lot of options here, but we just want changelog sync. Now, what this is going to do is create a couple tables in the database, and it's going to assert that these changes have already been run. So the next time, Melissa, when you add that new change set that adds the chip ID column to the pets table, it will look at that meta table and say, oh, everything else is run. I don't have to do that. I just have to run the most recent one. And this is also a way of keeping track of the history of the changes in the database. So if we do a refresh here, we're going to see that we have these tables here. If we go to database change log, we'll see, oh, look, they've all been executed. Yay. Because by definition, if I generated the change log, that stuff already exists. Now, the last thing I need to do before I check this into GitHub and offer this to my dev team to work on is I also need to do a changelog sync to the test environment. Now, remember, we're really good at this company about keeping environments in sync. And so what I'm going to do is just do a changelog sync to test. So when you run your new change set, it'll work great. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, what I need to do is update my properties file and point to this database. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this IP address. I'll go to my properties file and we'll update this. We'll get the rest of this stuff. Oh, kind of need that colon. And now I'm going to run the same command, but to a different database. Yay. Now, at this point, once I turn this over to you and the dev team, you will be able to add the change set. So let's go ahead and verify that this stuff has been added. We'll go to databases on test. And we have database changelog. And it's going to look remarkably similar to the other one. Now, at this point, get status. Well, we need to add some things. Git add. And now we're going to do git commit. Now, of course, I'm in a branch here because I'm doing the right thing as a developer, right? We'll do the PR thing. And so I'll do git commit, adding new changelog. And there we go. So now we are ready to add that change set.
That is pretty awesome. So that's going to free up a lot of your time for sure. If we have the power to be able to do this on our own during our development.
Now, look, absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, we want to help ourselves, right? But what this is going to do is free up the dev team to be able to move light speed and not have to have external dependencies. At Liquibase, we believe strongly in highly aligned teams that are loosely coupled. No blockers. Got a lot of stuff to do. So I think the next step is you're going to add that change set. So let me know if you have any problems and how I can assist.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm going to take this and run with it. Hi, Robert. We meet again.
Hello, hello. So how did it go?
It went great. We delivered to production. Everyone is happy, except for one little problem. They started using the system, and it turns out that one of the requirements that we got regarding the type of field, the type of like whether it's going to be numbers or letters in that chip ID was mistakenly told to us as it was just going to be numbers. Turns out that's not the case, and they actually need a different data type for that column.
So we use, if I recall correctly, we use big int, which is all integers. And it sounds like we need to move to something alphanumeric. Are there any symbols or anything weird?
No, it is all alphanumeric, just letters and numbers.
Okay. All right. Well, we probably need to change that data type.
Yes. An awesome Liquibase way to do this?
Well, there is. The change set, you'll need to do another change set. And luckily, because you did all this work to set this up and be the master of your own destiny, you can use the modify data type change set. And so what that will do is that will change it from big int to, I guess, varchar or something like that. Now, that being said, I mean, big int is 20 characters. How long do you think, or 20 bytes, how long do you think this string is going to be? How long do you think?
At least 30 is what we need to allow for.
Okay. So you're changing a data type, and if there is data in there, what will happen is it'll change it to a string, but since it's numbers, okay, no problem. And also you're going from 20 to 30, so we don't have to worry about truncating data. So I'm not concerned about this at all. This should be fine. And so my recommendation would be just to add another Liquibase change set, do another release, and let's let this DevOps process work for us.
Okay, this sounds like a plan. So what is it called again that I need to do?
It's called modify data type.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm going to go try that out and see how it works. I'll let you know what happens.
All right, well, thank you so much. Have fun.
All right, everyone. So we accomplished getting this application out there. We've updated it. We've got our database changes in. Thank you, Robert, so much for being an awesome DBA in this little
Of course. Well, it's easy when you have good developers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a lot of resources that we want to leave you with. We want to leave you with the GitHub repo, chances to ask questions, and other resources that you can look at and try. So have a look at this last closing slide here, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.